Health, Oral Health Month. Being Women's Month, August, we decided to treat our ladies to something special. So we've got a panel that's ladies only. It comprises of 3 ladies in oral health that have made a meaningful contribution in their own special way. And then at the end, we have 2 motivational speakers. So that is quite a treat. So I would like to welcome Dr. SADA Rasool, who's actually one of the youngest ladies on this panel. Welcome, Dr. Sadia. You can unmute yourself. And she's joined by Dr. Janelle Welgemoot. Welcome, Dr. Welgemoot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And then last but not least, she's not a stranger on our platform, Dr. Khanyi Makwakwa. Unmute yourself, Dr. Makwakwa.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Makwakwa. I'm going to start the evening with a few questions for the ladies, just so that we can just give it that bit of vibrancy, and so we can get a feeling of how the ladies are having it in oral health. You know, I mean, we've gone through a very depressing time in our country, in the world at large. So, I mean, let's just speak as ladies and enjoy the evening. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Rasool. Sorry, excuse me. Dr. Rasool is a young dentist who serves in the Young Dental Council as the secretary of the council. She's a full-time dentist in Durban, in Dr. Carter's family practice. Now, your first question, Dr. Rasool, is do you feel entering the field has been difficult as a female?
Dr. Mitsing, thank you for the floor. Well, basically, I don't feel like it's been difficult as a female. Of course, each individual comes with their own challenges, and there's different challenges, being it financial, especially with dentistry. There's always a financial challenge with setting up a practice. And there's always a cultural component to it as well. With the dental schools being located, you know, we have very few dental schools. There's no dental school in Durban that offers dental surgery. So I suppose for me, the challenge that I faced was leaving home to educate myself, and thereafter entering the field as a qualified professional was circumstantial. I know a few friends who have had difficulties with finding jobs. As you know, that's a problem because a young dentist doesn't have enough funds to set up a practice. So locum position would be the best initially. So I feel like it's circumstantial. Being a female as well, potential employers could hold back because of the fact that females come with additional responsibilities. You may want to start a family. You may be married. Your hours may not be exactly the same as a male. But otherwise, I really don't think so. I feel like we have just the same amount of potential, if not more.
Thank you, Dr. Rasool. The next question, Doc. Do you feel that there's a preconceived notion by patients that females are generally better than male dentists?
I've noticed with a lot of the patients, especially the elderly and our really young ones, they are more comfortable with female patients, probably because they see us as mothers or, you know, sisters. So definitely there, yes. And I think we do have more empathy at times. But like I said, it just depends. Patient interaction is very important, and building a relationship with your patients also helps. If you give patients time of day and you treat them with respect, then definitely it's reciprocated.
Thank you, Dr. Rasool. Have you found that patients undermine your skills as a newly qualified professional or a young dentist?
To an extent, yes. Especially as a locum where there's an already established practice and you coming in as someone newly qualified with a young face, you don't really have a long-standing patient relationship with the patients. So patients tend to come in looking for the dentist that they're familiar with. And that does pose a challenge. So, like I said, it boils down to patient relationship and starting, from the ground up, creating a foundation so that you have a long-standing relationship with those patients. Yeah, so that's my thought on that.
Thank you, Dr. Rasool. I'm going to move to you, Dr. Janelle. Dr. Janelle Welgemoot is the founder and CEO of Long Beach Dental in Cape Town. Apart from being a full-time dentist, she enjoys traveling, interior decorating, wine collection, and wine tasting. Dr. Welgemoot, welcome. I'm going to start
Thank you very
with your questions, Doc. Your first question. How do you see the role of dentists and the extended team and the fact that women has ever-growing presence in the working place to look beyond dentistry as a science and as an industry? And as a leader of your team, how do you create a culture of continuous development and advance your team to be leaders in the industry?
Thank you, Dr. Metsing. Yeah, I must say, being a dentist for close to 30 years now, the field has definitely changed for the better of us as females in dentistry. Where I think in the past, and I'm talking really about decades ago, it was predominantly a male environment, but we have really come on and moved up the ladder and really are on par with our male equals. I think in the practice, and because women are so well represented in our industry, it gives us the opportunity to be like supporting each other as females, and to try to create an environment in the practice that is a learning culture, where we give opportunities to everyone in the team to better themselves, to create opportunities and I mean, there are ample opportunities nowadays with CPD courses and online courses and so on, to better our skills and to have goals to serve not just our patients, but ourselves better as well. And it is a very stimulating industry. There is no ceiling to what you can achieve and what you can learn and so on. And it is accessible now with information worldwide, internationally accessible from the best people in the world that you can learn from. So for me in practice, this has always been to empower people when they come into the practice to see their potential, to develop their potential with them. And that makes of people that it's not just an 8 to 5 job, but that they enjoy that time that they spend at work and they feel that they are progressing not just in their careers, but also personally.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Welgemoot. The next question, discuss how you juggle the different roles in your surgery and your personal life to not live a life of only dentistry. How do you strike a balance?
That is challenging. I think for a practice owner, Dr. Rasool spoke now at the beginning, I also started as an assistant dentist in a practice where I worked for someone else as a locum. And that's what's so nice. You can start there and you can work your way through. Really, you can just follow your dream. Colleagues, is that we can choose a wonderful world. You can be a mother, you can be a wife, you can be make a career out of dentistry, but to juggle all the roles, that takes a bit of planning. And I think the biggest single thing is to determine what you want to do. Then set that goals out and then make it happen. But I mean, in my case, I'm trying to be a businesswoman where I have to be running the practice on the one side as a business. I'm also, there's no space or money to have a financial officer and a CEO and an HR person. So the dentist that owns the practice are often all of that. And you need to also decide on the vision and the mission of the practice and look after the finances, grow your staff, and then also grow your skills as a dentist and look after your patients. So it's juggling all the different roles. You go home and then you've got a family and you've got partners and people that you have to, that is part of your personal life, that you cannot also just like neglect. So yeah, that is challenging, but women are capable of it. We are, you know, like people that can juggle and that can do more than one thing.
Thank you, Doc. Your last question. Female dentists should realize their responsibilities in the community and start looking at how they can get involved. What difference do you make in your community?
Once again, it starts with you, and almost like you need to realize your responsibility about how you set an example, what values do you stand for, and then this next circle is the people that you work directly with, so your staff. And like I said before, empowering them, you get involved with them, you know where they need help or need advice, and then you need to look at your community where you're working, the patients that comes to our practice and the direct environment where we work in. And especially now after COVID, the opportunities to make a difference in our communities are huge. And it's not always dental related, you know, just the fact that we are dentists and that we are oral care professionals doesn't mean that that's all that we need to do. Sometimes, and I mean, there is already a lot that we can do, you know, now with COVID. And there I can honestly say GSK played a role in my practice. We started, I practice next door to a GP doctor, and there is informal settlements in the area where I work at. And the first thing that the doctor started was a hand hygiene program. And then we just cottoned onto it and started with an oral hygiene program and just got toothpaste and stuff to give to people, because that became essential during COVID, that we clean our hands and make sure that with cleaning our mouths that we don't get hand-mouth contamination. So we also, you know, get involved with animal anti-cruelty. You don't have to even look far to find a place where you as a practice owner or a dentist or oral hygienist can make a difference. Really, it's all around us. It's just for looking and to create, you know, use the opportunities.
Thank you, Dr. Belgemut. And last but not least, we have our very own Dr. Khanyi Makwakwa. I don't think I need to even read her CV because, I mean, she's gotten her own accolades. Dr. Khanyi is a personal mentor to myself. Actually got recruited into SADA when I was still a student by Dr. Khanyi Makwakwa. So she's one of the ladies in the oral health sector I really look up to. She's a philanthropist, she's a groundbreaking woman, and I can say so many things about her. She's currently the head of the clinical manager at the Sefako Makato Health Sciences University. So thank you, Dr. Makwakwa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. And I must say, I'm very proud of you. You know, keep on doing such a great job.
Thank you, Dr. Makwakwa. The first question for you: are male dentists better than female dentists?
Well, I'll actually also ask a question. I'll start responding by a question. Are women drivers better than men?
Yes.
We all know that we are, isn't it? We are definitely much better driver. So, I mean, it should follow that if we are better drivers, then we are better dentists. I mean, Dr. Belgemut, Rasul, I'm sure we are. But to actually comprehensively answer your question, you would have to look at research and look at the attributes and qualities that female dentists have. First and foremost, women are better communicators. So they're actually able to engage more with the patient. They're able to have more empathy. They're able to listen to the needs of the patient more than our male counterparts. You did say they're not here, so we can speak freely, isn't it? So you also then look at physical attributes. If you look at our hands, I'm not going to show them because I haven't had a manicure or pedicure in a long time because of lockdown. Physically, female hands are smaller. So which means, I mean, that's a critical thing that you actually need when you're working in a very narrow space. Females, I mean, if Dr. Rasul has already said, we find it much, much easier to work with children. And I mean, research has also scrutinized dentist appointments, and they found that actually with females, they're more likely to suggest preventative schedules and prescribe fluoride for their patients. So what I've actually just stated are just advantages or characteristics of females under general. But does this make us better than men? That's a question. The question we should seek to ask, do we aspire to be like male dentists? There I can definitely tell you that no, it's not an aspiration to be a male dentist. You're a female dentist. We are different. We do not compare apples and oranges. We have our attributes, we have our talents, we have our skills. So we should actually use our skills towards our patients, which also are very, very unique. So to answer your question, are we better? We should not be striving to be better than anybody. We should be striving to be the best dentist that we can be.
Thank you, Dr. Makwakwa. And I'm going to ask you one last question. Dr. Makwakwa, you have just started a new role as a clinical manager at the university. Are there any challenges that you experienced, and do you feel that those challenges were unique to you as a woman, or those are just general challenges that come with the office?
It becomes very difficult to differentiate at times, because at the end of the day, you're still a woman. So whatever you're going to experience as a female. So there's also a tendency to say, no, A, B, C, D, and E, or these challenges are actually happening because I'm a woman. But then, for instance, that causes a serious challenge, because then you don't look beyond the problem. You don't look and try to find a solution. Then you're actually concerting, all your efforts will then be concerted to changing people's perceptions about the fact that you're a female. So my job is very, very challenging. I don't think it's because I'm a woman. People will treat me differently, yes, because I'm not a man. And I need to also respond differently and understand that sometimes I may need to have to adapt certain things for me to get what is actually required. But having said that, we don't need to actually shy about it. We live in a very patriarchal society. Now, I've been in dentistry for over 20 years as well. It is changing. We're having more women in the profession, but for a long time, it was a boys' club. So it does get very difficult to break into the boys' club. But women in dentistry are actually doing very well. They're holding critical roles. We are leaders. So we are, when they see a woman in leadership, sometimes they actually don't know how to behave or act around that particular person. So yes, there are challenges. Is it because I'm a woman? I've never been anything else. So it will be difficult for me to say, if I was a man, how would it be? It's easy for me to feel or think that way, but it really delays the problem solving that needs to happen afterwards.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makwakwa, and thank you to the ladies in oral health. You've really given us information, and I hope that the ladies that are part of the participants can really learn from some of the information that you've given them, and we can grow as a profession. Let me get to this part of the program and thank GSK for sponsoring this evening. They fully funded this evening. So thank you very much to GSK. And as a result, GSK has a special video for everyone. So I'm going to ask Norma to just play the video for us. And then after that, we'll have our two ladies that we have on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
At GSK Consumer Healthcare, one of our core values is to put our healthcare partners and their patients first. Since the start of COVID-19, we have been working around the clock to ensure that you, as our trusted healthcare partner, and your patients remain our number one priority. GSK has created a Dentistry Mini Atlas app that enables you to view chapters, select articles, edit images, save images, or print for use as a poster or patient information leaflets. It's a dentistry compilation of resources at your fingertips. Some of the modules included are anatomy, physiology, pathologies, and our GSK product information. The Dentistry Mini Atlas app is available to download from the Google Play Store and Apple App Store and through the Sensodyne website. After downloading, look out for a prompt requiring a username and a password. The username is GSK and the password Sensodyne. For access to the desktop version, please visit sensodyne.co.za. Click on Dentistry Mini Atlas at the top right of the page and use the same username and password. Look out for an email from SADA. If you need any detailed information, assistance with download, or a user demonstration, please reach out to your GSK dental representative to assist you.
Tabi, you're muted, sorry.
Apologies. Thank you very much to GSK, and thank you very much for the sponsorship, for the goodwill. Now we move on to the beginning of our program with our motivational speakers. First up, we have Miss Roxy Marosa. She was born in Kimberley, which is a town in the Northern Cape. She studied personnel management at Cape Town Technikon, or Cape Tech, in the Western Cape. She acquired marketing and sales skills, developing and started her own journey of personal information in 1999 through an international organization, Landmark Education and Insights. Between 2000 and 2003, Roxy participated in the Landmark Education Leadership Program in the UK, simultaneously leading successful seminars in South Africa. She furthered her leadership training in HIV and AIDS field as a counselor and program facilitator through a number of organizations, including People Management and CABSA. I don't want to take up much of Roxy's time to speak. I think her work will speak for itself. Thank you, Roxy, and over to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to all the doctors. It's really an honor. I have to admit, it's the first time that I'm addressing all doctor candidates in a talk. So yeah, just to add to that, I have since started my own business and launched Roxy Marosa Anti-Aging Skincare. My focus has always been development. Over the years, doing transformational work and personal development work, I identified that there was something missing, because we're always looking at growing people, but we never get to address the core things or the context of what has had people be who they are. So I usually love to work and ask the question, you know yourself and you have who you identify yourself as. And if we were in an open platform, or if I was face to face with you, I would be asking you, you know, what is it that you would say you are, or who would you say you are? And many of us would come up with different answers, and probably even looking at who you are today. But I'd like to take people back to what formed you, what had you create you or define you as the person that you are. And I like to particularly look at the things that has not worked for you, or worked for you in a way that would have made you to actually excel beyond where you are today. And hence the title, The Power of I Am. So I'd like to take you back to when you were a little kid. And my invitation for you when you're listening to me is, don't listen to me from what I'm saying, but listen from your life, because we all have different backgrounds, okay? So I'd like you to go back to when you were a kid. And some of us, I'm over 50 already, and I don't remember much of when I was little. And so my invitation is, if you cannot remember so far back, I'd like you to just think of little kids when you are amongst them. So obviously from the time that we are born, you are completely reliant on the support of your caretaker, mostly your mother and your father, and if not, but the person that is taking care of you. And you go through life trusting that what you're getting is exactly what you need, and you're going to get what you want or what it is that you need at the time that you need that. But time goes on, and now I'd like you to imagine 2-year-olds, okay? Now, when we look at 2-year-old kids, at the time, all they're thinking of is fun when interacting with each other. They identify and see each other in the moment. A 2-year-old does not ask themselves, who are you? Why do you look like that? And for example, if they're walking around with their nappy and it's full, you know, we put Pampers on these babies today, and it can fill up with urine, and they will play around. No one will be going to the other one and not wanting to interact with them because their nappy is full or that. They have utter love for each other. And if anything, they would be kissing each other, and some of them will be having some snot or even tears if there was any crying taking place, and they kiss each other, and no one will be going like, oh, I don't want to be kissing this snot, and or move away from me, don't touch me, or anything like that. There is no judgment. Fast forward, we come to the age of 6 or 7. We become aware of our environment. And when we become aware of our environment, we notice that there are adults, we notice the different age groups, we notice even speaking and language. And we start picking up certain things. The things sometimes that we get to pick up are often things that stay at the back of our minds and are things that define us as human beings. And sometimes we don't even realize that these things are defining us as human beings, okay? So some experiences that some people may have had, and I like to refer to different races in this regard. I'll start, let's say, with Black people. I'm sure we've got some Black people amongst the doctors here. And if you just think perhaps something that you might have heard as a child, something that might have left you to feel inadequate, okay? So some of the things would be things like, oh, you know, this child's hair is so creased and whatever. And we know in the olden days, nowadays there's weaves, you know, when you're older. But when we were younger, I remember what my mother used to do with me was to comb my hair, and she had to plait it because it was the easiest way for her not to have to maintain my hair on a daily basis. But that combing was really, really painful. And I know some people that I've interacted with before, in this case, you know, where Black people often or commonly, something that I used to be teased about when I was little, I used to be told that my nostrils are so big, I am consuming all the oxygen in the room. And things like that used to make me feel really, really small. I didn't realize the impact of it later on in life until I really delved deep into my life in the past and see what is it about me right now that makes me feel not so confident to approach people, to interact, to just be free or even express myself freely, okay? So if I look at, you know, things that I have heard amongst even colored people, in the olden days, people would be looking at, there was this clear distinction of when your hair is straighter, you were related to as a better person. If you had curly hair, your hair had to be straightened out and combed out, and you were named like Kurshara and stuff like that. In fact, I realized last year or 2 years ago, there's a Kurskop group on Facebook, you know, and now Kurskop is the fashion. Where in the olden days, if you had Kurskop, you were not the ideal person in, you know, to be reckoned with or to be identified with. And those are also some of the things that might have had some kind of, in fact, or, you know, affecting you in such a way that you actually feel that you are inadequate. And the common thing about, if we look at our white counterparts, you know, having blue eyes or gray eyes is the thing. If you have dark eyes, you know, you almost are not that appealing. There's something else with you. There's some inadequacy with you. And I remember one show that Oprah Winfrey did years ago, also just trying to define or making people realize the difference with discrimination and what discrimination can do. Her show was about, you know, allowing people with dark brown eyes into the room, and people into the room first, and people with light blue eyes to be seated at one side, and the people with dark brown eyes were given the preferential treatment. And the people with light blue eyes were wondering what the hell was going on. So just getting to see the difference when people get to treat you different from who you really are, the impact that it has on you as a person. And things like that can actually make you define yourself in a way that impacts how you express yourself in life earlier on. And we may find that through life, depending what your background is or what your experience is or what you have encountered. And, you know, often those encounters would have been with people that we love or people that we place in a high regard, and uncle and aunt, or sometimes even our own parents, you know. And because they are so significant to you, those things that they said to you became significant, not knowing that later on in life that it was going to impact you in ways that maybe for now you don't know, or maybe you already know how it has impacted you. Just fast forwarding, things, or those things, those experiences of inadequacy impacts us in your choice of career, your choice of partners, your choice of where you live, your choice of how you conduct your life, your choice of just even identifying you as an individual and how you even express yourself in life. So you either try to move very far away, or you actually buy into that concept or into that definition. You know, I'm particularly speaking and would like people who find themselves in relationships where you are made to feel like your word doesn't matter, or doesn't matter to the level that you would want it to. And this can be in relationship, a romantic relationship, your work relationship, your relationship with your family, your relationship with your friends. Okay, I know for a number of years, I used to compare myself with certain people. And when people had something that I regarded to or referred to that it was better than what I had, I regarded myself to be less than those people. So I didn't interact at the level that I wanted to, or be self-expressed. It limited my self-expression. I realized even with the kind of job that I chose. In my younger years, I chose careers that were so challenging to me. And I made those choices because deliberately I wanted to break through, and I wanted to prove to myself that I can do what I think was so challenging. But I didn't enjoy myself in the process. Over the years, as I was doing this transformational work, I got to delve deep into myself. And this is the invitation that I have for each and every one of you, to delve deep into yourself and go back and say, who am I? Or who do I say I am? And for a very long time, walking through this, because it doesn't happen overnight. Once I realized one breakthrough after another and after another and after another, it also took practice. It took practice for me to go out and allow myself to be in environments that I said I really wanted to be in. You know, one of the things was that I wanted to be a speaker, but standing in front of people and speaking, I remember my first talk that I did. By the end, when I was done, I couldn't even remember the very first moment when I started that conversation. It just felt like there was just sound happening all around me, and then the next thing, it was over. So it took practice for me to start enjoying who I said I am, or the person that I really want to be. I love development, and I have gotten myself into doing the work of development. And yes, that past has allowed me to be able to go back and see and say, these are the things that I don't want. These are the things about myself that I identify I didn't like. But now this is who I say I am. And I can refer back. That is, for me now, it is a reference, because the other thing is that you cannot wipe off your past, however painful it is. But you can choose who you are today, and you can develop yourself to be the better person that you've always wanted to be for the next moment, the next hour, the next day, the next years, and the next decades. All right. So my invitation for everyone is, sometimes even the people that has said whatever it is that they have said to us, however, I just want to minimize my screen so that I can see I'm not going over my time. However, it might have been of a negative impact on you, the invitation is for you to embrace that, because you cannot change that, but you can learn from it. And learning from it, you can define yourself. And the definition, or the person that you create yourself to be, make sure that it is a person that you want to celebrate every moment. You know, one of the things that I wanted to do when I was a little kid, I loved dancing, but my mother would just not allow me to dance, because she always said, there is no career of dancers. And that is how it was in those days. But dance, I felt, was really an expression for me that I didn't have to think about what I was doing. It just came naturally. I'm over 50. I have decided that I want to dance. And my daughter and I, we take time on Friday night, whatever it is that I was doing, come from 4 o'clock, we start playing music. And at a time, she will go into her room, as teenagers will usually do, because, you know, parents are boring. And I will be sitting and I'll film myself, or I'll be having my music and I'll be dancing. And it's my way of expressing myself. And it's my way of doing the things, or doing one of the things that I've always wanted to do. And I find myself that it's also a way of just making me to feel like, you know what, life is worth living. If you have chosen your career, and the career is not necessarily what you really want, you know, one of the things, as you have Dr. Ntabiseng mentioned earlier on, is that I'm in sales. I don't really love sales, but it is something that I have to do. So I have found another way of selling. And my way of selling now is about talking about myself, because the fortunate thing that I have is that all the products and services that I have to render is things that I do. It's not things that I'm having to do on behalf of someone else. So it makes it easier. So about 15 years ago, I decided that I was going on my own and I'm doing my own thing. And yes, it was very hard and challenging. And I decided that I have to redefine myself. and I redefined myself, and my focus became me. And inside of that, I branded Roxy Marosa as a brand, and that is what I have been putting out there. And for yourself as well, I mean, you're doing a very important job right now as doctors. It might not be what you ultimately love, or it might be your ultimate love. And if that is it, then really great, and congratulations and well done to everyone. And I really wish that you just grow what it is that that you are doing, and you go from strength to strength. And if there is anything that, if at any point, makes you to feel any doubtful or inadequate of yourself, just know it is often not what is happening right now, but it is something that has happened in the past. And I always say, if we as kids had the power of making a decision of who we are then, imagine if you take that power now and you apply it in your life, the person that is going to blossom right now and for the rest of the world. That's my
Thank
talk.
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Roxy.
I'll stay on until, for the questions to come.
Very empowering indeed. And you leave us with a very profound question: who am I?
Thank you.
And then with that, I'm gonna introduce our next speaker, Miss Nikki Bush. She's not a stranger on our platforms. I've actually personally attended one of her talks. Nikki Nikki Bush, human potential and parenting expert. Nikki Bush empowers individuals, families, and teams to win at work, at home, and in life. She has the knack to putting difficult, complex, and sensitive topics on the table, ones we often prefer to avoid, and making them accessible, such as disruption, death, loss, team dynamics, personal leadership, parenting, sexuality education, tech and your kids, parenting, and so much more. Nikki has written 4 best-selling parenting books with major publishers, including her latest, which is called Future-Proof Your Child for the 2020s and Beyond. I don't want to waste any further time. I'm going to hand over back to you, Nikki. Roxy, can I just ask you to hide your video there?
And
Thank
can you put me on speaker view, please? Right. Good evening, all the ladies in oral health. It is fantastic to be with you. As Dr. Ntabiseng said, I'm no stranger to SADA. I've actually done plenty of work with some of your regions and various groups of people, including the oral hygienists, over the years. So it's great to be back and to serve you this evening. So when Marilise invited me to come and speak to you this evening, she was telling me this is a ladies only, no men allowed, nobody can peek. And so when I told her what my topic was going to be, which is which jacket are you wearing now? And I said to her, well, I actually am going to change into 5 different jackets during the presentation. She said, well, this fits perfectly with what we are going to be talking about. So I'm the one who's going to remove my clothes, but I'm going to be putting my jackets on one by one. I'm going to share my screen, but I would also like to say to you at this point that you can minimize the presentation and you can maximize me. The presentation is just there as a guide, but you need to see me wearing the different jackets. So I'm going to share my screen and you should be able to find the little line between my presentation and the picture of me. Right, can you see my screen now, Dr. Ntabiseng?
Yes, Nikki, yes, we can.
Okay,
Perfect.
right. So my topic is which jacket are you wearing now? And exactly as Roxy was talking about, I really do believe that we are always in the process of becoming who we are. We're not born this adult with this perfect career, with this perfect life. We get there gradually. And I don't think we ever get to the end of it. We are always in the process of becoming. But do we ever stop to look back and to celebrate how we got to here? And that's what I'm speaking about this evening. I'm here to remind you of the journey you have walked, the experiences that you have had, to celebrate the lessons and the wisdom that you have acquired on your way to getting to here. And this is all about your personal empowerment story. So I'm going to share 5 jackets that I've worn in my life, the 3 different careers that I have had. I started off, many people don't know this, in public relations, marketing, and communications, and that was for about the first 10 years of my working life. Then I went into direct selling. Yes, think Tupperware, okay, but it wasn't Tupperware. It was direct selling in educational games and toys. I was very fortunate to fall into my passion. And then I became the speaker and the author that you know me as today. And that was about 15 years ago. So you can see that I have morphed and changed and grown over the years into what you see now as a brand of one, as the Nikki Bush brand. As Roxy was saying, she's now branded herself. And many of you in oral hygiene are able to brand yourselves too. So I've always been a writer or a speaker in some way, shape, or form. But it has changed as I've gone along. And, you know, when Roxy started and said, how do you define yourself? What came to mind is that when somebody says, hi, I'm so-and-so, what do you do? Who are you and what do you do? We often define ourselves by what we do. And yet, I believe that what we do is one of the many expressions of who we are. And I've never seen, for example, my role as a wife, as a mother, or whichever working role I'm choosing to fulfill right now, I've never seen them as 3 distinctly different parts of my life. I see them as all expressions of who I am. So I hope that as I go through my various jackets and seasons of my life this evening, that you are going to find yourself in my story. So I'm going to wear literally 5 different jackets as I go along, and I want to share some of the main lessons that I have learned, the wisdom that I've acquired along the way, just the pieces of wisdom that remain relevant to me right now, because I want you to get a sense that nothing is ever lost and nothing is ever forgotten. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, now I always take a big deep breath every year when I do this talk, and I think, will I still fit my school blazer? And oh, I do. So this is my school blazer. It was my matric blazer, and I think it's really all about the fact that we must remember that everybody was always once a beginner. I always have to say this, particularly when I speak to young girls, when I have an audience of grade 11 or 12 learners whose mothers may be professionals like you, a dentist or a lawyer or a doctor. And I have to say, your mother didn't start like that. Your mother also started as a beginner once upon a time. So when I was a beginner, when I entered high school, I was really small. I was one of the smallest girls in the class. I grew later on in my school career. I wasn't just physically small, and I had double narrow fitting shoes. I think they were double A shoes. I had to have a panel taken out of my skirt. I mean, my blazer came to the end of my hands, and it was the smallest blazer you could buy. I had these skinny little ponytails, and I looked a bit like a drowned rat. I was also incredibly, incredibly shy. Now, you will never believe that. And most people who've known me for a long time cannot believe that I was a shy child, but I was. So I felt seriously small in a co-ed school that had 1,500 people with these mountain boys up there. And here's this little tiny Nikki Bennett. And there were a couple of things that happened that really taught me some life lessons that have been so useful to me. And the first one was about being human, about acknowledgement and seeing people. So there I was, feeling very small. I looked around at all the people who had lots and lots of colors on their blazer. And I figured out that those people were involved in a lot at school. They were doing sport and cultural activities, and they were fairly good academically, and they were busy and they were involved. So I figured out you had to get busy and involved, which is what I did. So one of the things that I did, one of the many things, was I got into the school play in the first year as the chorus in My Fair Lady. And the most amazing thing happened. There was this matriculant with colors all the way from here to next year. I think she had 2 panels of colors on her blazer. She used to change next to me. She was also in the chorus. And every time we had play practice, we would chat. But it went beyond the changing rooms. When she saw me out and about in the school environment, in the corridors, she also used to greet me. She actually had no idea of the gift she was giving me. She made me feel seen. She made me feel like I existed. And in my 30s, when I first started giving talks, she actually attended one of my talks, and I recognized her. She, of course, didn't recognize me at all. And I thanked her afterwards for how she had changed my life and my self-concept just because she was a decent human being who took a little bit of interest in little old me. She had absolutely no idea that she had changed my life. So my challenge to you is to make sure that you acknowledge and see other people. It doesn't matter how smart they are, or whether they are the tea girl, or whether they are your colleague on the same level as you. We need to treat people with respect and dignity. Then I learned to be strategic. I was a fairly average student, and I was a fairly average sportswoman. I really wanted to make the first hockey team, but I actually really wasn't good enough. I was in the second team, but I worked out that there was one position where there was a gap. It was a position nobody else wanted to fill. So I put my hand up to be left wing. Now, nobody wants to be left wing because you don't get a lot of ball on that side of the field. But that was a strategic move for me, and that's how I got into the first team. But I really wasn't good enough to get provincial colors. So I had another strategy in mind. I became an umpire as well, and I got provincial colors for being an umpire. Well, I forgot to bring my whistle, but let me tell you, I can blow a whistle as well as the men's Springbok hockey umpire because I was trained by the men's Springbok hockey umpire. And there's an absolute art to blowing a whistle so that everybody takes note and stops and does what the umpire tells them to do. So sometimes we have to take the road less traveled in order to get to a place where we want to be. I was also, I was born to lead. I didn't realize it very early on in my life, but there was something about leadership that I've always been attracted to, and people have followed. But here I was with no colors on my blazer at all. Somewhere around 15, this thing in my head, I just realized that you could actually have an intention and you could work towards things and achieve them. And I got, I thought it'd be quite nice to be a prefect. And then I thought it'd be quite nice to be head girl, actually. But I had no colors on my blazer. So the most remarkable thing actually happened, which completely blew me away, was at the end of my Standard 9 year, when they announced the head prefects, I was announced head prefect. I was the first and only ever person who was ever made head girl with no braid on her blazer and not one color on her blazer. I've tried to not be a leader many times. I've tried to shut up, hide under the desk. When I was studying in tertiary education, I tried to pretend I wasn't the leader. And even when I tried to pretend I couldn't lead, people would haul me out and make me the leader. So I've actually just had to accept I am a leader. So this blazer was a very important part of my life. When I was 15, it was like a chrysalis. Apparently, I was like a butterfly coming out of a chrysalis. That's when I decided the only way to really get on in life was to communicate. And I was going to have to absolutely conquer this shyness in order to succeed. So I worked very hard at it, and I worked through some personal barriers, and there we go. The rest, as they say, is history. Then after school, I decided that I was going to take the road less traveled once again. So when I finished matric, I was thinking about going to Stellenbosch University to become a dietitian or home economist. And instead, I took a year off and I went to Australia. And there we go. I went to Australia, and I definitely went to a place where I knew nobody and nobody knew me. And you know, when you do something like that, it's very, very uncomfortable. So this is my very beautiful Rotary Youth Exchange blazer. So while everybody was getting on the bandwagon with their academic career, there I was in Australia being paid $30 pocket money a month by the local Rotary Club. And I had absolutely nothing else to my name. I lived with 5 different families. I lived with change constantly. Every 6 to 8 weeks, I moved. But it was the most amazing opportunity to run my own race for the first time. And I smiled when Roxy was talking about the fact that things that happen early on in our life often define us or cage us in a perception of ourselves that is maybe wrong or not right for us. And this was an opportunity for me to create my own version of me. You know, our parents have a very clear picture of how they would like us to grow up. And sometimes we have to break free of that mold. Now, this was in the days. So to all the young ladies in the audience this evening, I was in Australia in the days when there were no cell phones, no email, no fax machine had been invented yet. I am 53 years old. And my mum and I used to write long, long letters to each other every single week. And we were allowed to speak twice in the year on the telephone because trunk calls, overseas calls, were very expensive. And the calls were exactly 3 minutes each. And my dad held 6 peanuts next to my mum. And for every 30 seconds, he dropped a peanut. Well, all we really had time to say was, "Hi, Mum, I love you, goodbye." A far cry from anybody who's got youngsters who are traveling the world today, not that anyone's traveling during COVID. Anyway, so this was an interesting experience. It was uncomfortable and I learned an enormous amount. I was also in Australia in the year in which South Africa, in many parts of South Africa, were declared under a state of emergency. I left this country not knowing what apartheid was because I was a privileged white South African. I went to a country where South Africa was on the front page of the newspaper every single day because of the human rights abuse that was going on in this country. It was the first time I had access to Alan Paton's Cry the Beloved Country. I went to rock concerts with Midnight Oil, where the entire audience was on their feet singing Free Mandela. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, if they know I'm a white South African, they're going to mob and lynch me. Because I suddenly had a conscience about what was happening in this country. Another very interesting thing happened to me. And it's, I guess, it formed the basis of the fact that we can always change if we want to. If we have another vision for ourselves, we can always step onto another track. So I told you that I was going to come back and study home economics and dietetics. So while I was in Australia, I did some interesting work experience. I had to matriculate, but not to pass, but it was just part of the program. But I was able to take time off to travel as well as to do different things. So I went and I worked in the Grosvenor Hotel because seeing as I was going to go into home economics and dietetics, I thought it would be interesting to go and work in a hotel. Well, I did nothing very sexy. I peeled potatoes and I made beds and cleaned floors. That's what I did. You know, on MasterChef, when they go, yes, chef. Well, I did, yes, chef. I went to the Mitsubishi car factory. I went to work in the spastic centers of South Australia for 2 weeks. And that was a turning point in my life. No, I didn't decide to become a nurse or a caregiver or an occupational therapist or an NDT physiotherapist. One day, when I went home from working, in my handbag was a sheaf of papers. And that sheaf of papers was put there by the person who had taken me for that work experience. And he was the head of marketing and fundraising for this organization. And it was a sheaf of papers from the Public Relations Institute of Australia. And on the top, he'd written by hand, "I think this sounds like you." Now, this was something I had never considered in my wildest dreams of going into marketing, public relations, communications, advertising. I read this in bed at night and I went, wow, 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 wow. This is what I want to do. So I think it's very important that we are aware of who our mentors are in our life. Wherever we go, there's always somebody who might be an interesting influence in our path. And I've had this many, many times. So I then decided I was going to change career or change direction. So I let my parents know very, very late in the year, in around, I think it was September, October-ish, when it was far too late to get me into university for this new qualification that I wanted to do. So once again, I actually had to take the road less traveled. And I came home and had to do another gap year because I hadn't made that cutoff, the application cutoff. So what did I do? Well, I did a year's secretarial course. Once again, something most people don't know about me. I spent a year doing a secretarial course, and I am so unbelievably happy that I did, because there was something invaluable that I learned in that year. One of my subjects, of course, was touch typing. I learned to touch type at 120 words per minute with a 90% accuracy. What am I today? I'm a speaker and I'm an author. Do you think typing accurately and being able to type as fast as I can think is an advantage? Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I am a massive content creator, why I can write books, blogs, articles, etc. at speed, because I can quite literally type as fast as my brain thinks. So I am forever grateful, firstly, that I chose to be brave enough to leave this country at the age of 17, knowing nobody and without email and without WhatsApp and all those things. And I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that I was courageous enough to switch tracks because I followed something that made my heart sing. But that's not all, as they say in the movies. So I finished, I went off. So I finished my secretarial course, and then I went on to do my 3 years of public relations and communications. And I had a wonderful time, but I didn't do it the way everybody else was doing it either. I once again chose the road less traveled, and I worked full time while I studied for the first year. I did the same in my third year, and only in my second year did I study full time. So by the time I finished my education, I actually had a lot of practical experience as well as my qualification, which meant that when I left, I actually earned more and got the best jobs out of the entire cohort. So I went into public relations, and so I will now put on my corporate jacket. So the corporate jacket, of course, in those days, it would have been in the 80s, and I would have had much bigger shoulder pads than these, but this will have to do for now. I don't own the big shoulder pad jacket anymore. And remember the permed hair, the big hair. So off I went into the public relations world. And like I said earlier on in this presentation, everybody was once a beginner. And even though I now had my qualification, I still had to start at the very beginning. And that meant that I was the youngest person in the department at AECI, and you start as a beginner. I had to hand deliver 100 invitations around Johannesburg by car. I know Johannesburg, north, south, east, and west like the back of my hand because I drove it. I was also the appy in the department who every Monday morning was given what was considered the worst job in the department, in group communications. I would walk in on a Monday morning and be handed a pile of newspapers about that big. My job was to read every Saturday, every Sunday, and every Monday newspaper from around the country in both English and Afrikaans. Well, what did that teach me? What were the skills? I learned to speed read in 2 languages, and my general knowledge grew from this to this. As a researcher and an author and a speaker and a content creator, that gave me yet another set of skills that I could never have learned just through studying. So sometimes you have to do the hard yards. In fact, you always have to do the hard yards. So I just want to say to all our younger women on this webinar, do the hard yards and do them well. You've got to do your time. You've got to do your time. You've got to first add value. You are not entitled to anything unless you first add value. So the question I have for you is, how are you adding value? And also for the younger people on this webinar, because I know that young people job hop. And maybe not in your industry, but as a rule, they move careers fairly, or move jobs fairly quickly. Like within 9 to 18 months, they're usually on to the next job. And I want to say to you that you need to stick around for long enough to learn the lessons that you need to learn. Stick around for long enough, even if it's a little uncomfortable. And everybody will have a baptism by fire at some point in their career. Mine was in my 3rd job. I'd already been working for a couple of years. I was about 24, 25 years old. I had finished my qualification and I'd been given the award for best writing skills in public relations. I was a decent writer. I'd had a number of years of experience, but I landed up in one of the top public relations consultancies in the country. And my boss, the account manager, was an ex-Sunday Times sub-editor. So his use of the English language was superb. The written word was superb. What a teacher I had at my disposal. Problem was, he wasn't a good teacher. He may have been a good writer, but he wasn't a good teacher. And he made my life a living hell. I stuck around for about 2 years to learn what I could from him. But this is what he used to do to me. We would sit with a client, we would take a brief. My job was then to go and write the press releases. He would read them, or I don't even know if he read them, but he would take a pen and he would quite literally put his pen through my work, give it back to me, and not tell me what was wrong with it. He was a really poor teacher. And I was left wondering what I was doing wrong. And I actually was quite scared of him. And I used to wake up with a sore tummy every single morning when I went to work. You know, that kind of person. He was my baptism by fire. I was already a pretty good writer. But I have to thank him. And I thank him often, just silently, for making me better than good. I was already good, but he pushed me to be better than good. He didn't do it in a nice way, but he definitely was part of my journey to become better than good. And I am today a very, very good writer. So I stuck around for long enough to learn from him. And sometimes I really want to take my four books that I've written with the likes of Penguin Random House, and I would love to go and rub his nose in my books. I really would, to say, you know what, you never wrote a book that was published by a mainstream publisher. But I haven't done that yet. Don't need to do it, actually. So I think that it's just really, really important that we notice the teachers along the way, that those teachers are maybe not always nice, not always comfortable, but you know, we are always learning when we are uncomfortable. And that is what you have to learn about discomfort, is that sometimes it is jolly, jolly good for your learning process. So I landed up working for a number of companies. And then I started my own public relations consultancy, and I ran that for about 4 years. And during that time, I got married, and then I had my first baby. So I have 2 boys. They're now 25 and nearly 21. And public relations was a really great career, and I was earning lovely money running my own business. But you know, life has an interesting way of not and taking you on a different path. And I've always been a voracious learner and a quick learner. And I get bored once my learning curve plateaus out. And I was doing my job, firstly, without thinking too much because it was easy. Secondly, I had a baby, and I had a very clear idea of what I wanted motherhood to look like for me. And sitting on the floor, playing with my little one, with a stack of files and my brick-like sized cell phone at the time, mobile phones were like the size of a brick, waiting for the editor of the Sunday Times to phone me about a press release that I had submitted, just started not feeling right. That wasn't what being present was supposed to feel like for me. So I realized deep in my heart that I was looking for change. I was looking for change, a new learning curve, and something that was maybe a little more family friendly to me. And it was a big decision because I had great clients and I was earning good money. And if I'd continued on that trajectory, I would be way wealthier than I probably am today in the financial sense. But as things happen, another teacher arrived in my life. And my friend Margie arrived. She'd known me since I was 8. And she said to me when my son was 6 months old, "Nix, you're a wonderful mother, but you know nothing about the educational development of young children." Now, she was an exceptional preschool teacher. So in comes my next jacket and my next career. And this is when I stepped into direct selling of educational games and toys. She took me to the first workshop that I went to with regard to educational games and toys. And you won't believe it, maths was my absolute worst subject at school. And what were they doing? We were playing with games, and it was all about teaching maths, learning through play. And I was just so blessed to fall into my passion. I quite literally fell into my passion. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I started this new chapter of my life of doing legacy work, where I realized that everything I did was helping people to make ends meet, number one, because the people in my team were able to sell games and toys and make the money that they needed. And secondly, everything we were doing with the games and toys of educating parents about learning through play was changing the next generation. And that just made my heart just sing with joy. When I say I fell into my passion, it was kind of like I was just wired for it. I just knew it. I didn't even have to study it, although I did. But it was just so alive for me. So I took on this direct selling team, something I had never considered before. But what was I doing? I was still speaking for a living. I was writing for a living. I started writing training programs, designing training programs. I realized I could motivate people with a lollipop. I was leading, which was my happy space, and I could sell ice cream to Eskimos. I uncovered this wealth of skills that I didn't even know that I had. And I was able to have this real quality life with my children, with my husband, and to live a life that was aligned with my values. I learned so much about human nature, more about human nature in those years than I've learned in all the other years of different careers put together. And one of the biggest things I learned, one of the biggest pieces of wisdom I can share with you about this jacket is that if you can help other people get what they want or achieve what they want to achieve, you will be helping yourself to get what you want to. I really believe that we do not travel this life alone. We co-create amazing together. And when we collaborate, there is more strength. And I have proven this time and time again. So this jacket of being a wife, being a mother, and my direct selling years holds so many joyful memories for me. And it was in this time when other doors started opening, because the more I was helping other people and the more I was networking and meeting people, the more I got exposed to different things. And I went back to my roots, actually, because I nearly miscarried my second child. And I quit the sales force at that time. I quit leading my team because I'd also plateaued. My learning had plateaued and I was ready for something else. And that company called me and said, we're ready for an editor for our external client newsletter and our internal company newsletter. Are you ready? Now, I had given them that proposal before I even entered their sales force, many, many years before, and they hadn't been ready for me, but now they were. So I put on a new hat, and for nearly 5 years, one of my many projects that I was involved in was actually to write that newsletter, and I got to interview top experts in the field of child development and education for nearly 5 years. And I built an unbelievable network of experts who became my sounding board. Because while I was wearing this jacket, while I was pregnant with my first child, I blew 2 discs in my lower back, and I started learning how to live with pain. I didn't even know that I'd blown the discs, because when you're pregnant, you don't take medication and you don't go for scans and x-rays and things. So I learned to live with pain. When my second child was 2 years old, I blew the 3rd disc in my lower back, and then I was in serious trouble. And it was at that point that I obviously went to a neurosurgeon and an orthopedic surgeon, and they looked at me and they said, you are way too young in your 30s for us to fuse you, and yet you need a fusion. And so they gave me some advice that made me incredibly angry. And they said, go home and find a way to manage your pain. And our suggestion is to treat yourself as if you've had the spinal fusion. And that meant lying down for 4 months. Never sitting, only standing, and lying down as much as possible. And I decided to do that. So I lay down for 4 months. I never went near my children's schools. I just lay there and I let people look after me and fetch and carry me for therapy and cook and clean. And for the first time, I hired an assistant for my business because it had to go on. And while I was lying on the floor, because I literally lay in traction on my bedroom floor for most of every day, I had enough time to stop, to pause, to think. And when Dr. Welgemuth was talking about all her different roles, I was thinking about, one of the gifts we don't get as women, or don't give ourselves, is time to pause and breathe and do nothing. Because so often we feel if we're doing nothing, we are not worthy. And yet self-care is probably the single most important thing we should be doing. So I lay down for the first time and I went, right, that's it. I'm going to look after myself. And while I was lying on that floor, I had time to hear all the voices and for the message to land that people had been saying to me for a long time. Nikki, we know that you have very clear opinions and ideas around child development. We want to hear your ideas, not the company's ideas, your ideas. And while I was lying on the floor, I got brave enough and summoned up enough courage to actually go, okay, I'm hearing this, I'm listening, and I'm going to do this. And I launched my first talk, Passion for Play. And that is where my career as a speaker and an author began. So in 2006, that's when I started making all my money from being a full-time speaker, firstly. So I now don my speaker's jacket. And it was at this point that I had to get really brave, because now people were really listening to my thinking and how I was connecting the dots. And there were moments where I went, oh my goodness, people are going to take me seriously enough to raise their children following some of this advice. How much do I really believe in this? And I really had a stab of conscience when my first manuscript went to Penguin to be printed. And it was, oh, I felt ill in my stomach, and then I had to get really, really brave. So this is when my career started as a thought leader. And the lesson here really has been to walk my talk. I have to walk my talk. I have to be my authentic self. Fortunately, this is the culmination of many, many, many years and many iterations of Nikki Bush, the evolution of Nikki Bush into a brand of one, and the brand that I guess you guys know, the person who's on 702 on a Wednesday with Azania, and 702 on a Saturday with Refill and on Espresso, and standing up in front of audiences. But this career didn't start on the stage. This career started around my dining room table. In fact, it started on my dressing table. And I moved from my dressing table to my dining room table, from my dining room table to the lounge. When I wrote my first book, I was in the lounge, and then into an office. So once again, with every new career I've had, I have started from the very beginning. I have started from the bottom, because if you learn how to do what has to be done at the very beginning well, you've got strong foundations. And if you ever ask anyone to help you, you know how they've got to do that part of the work. So I think that this at the moment is where I am, obviously. Professionally, it's where I find myself. It's my happy space. I'm still writing. I'm still speaking for a living. But now I'm not the one putting other people in front of the microphone or the camera. I'm the one who's in front of the microphone or the camera. And I've had to get really comfortable with that. So I often get asked, so why do you still do so much media work, Nikki, when you don't need it for credibility? Because when you are a news speaker, you obviously need all of that for credibility. Now I don't have to do it for credibility. Now I do it because it helps millions more people than I could help if I was just helping people who are in the room with me when I speak, or on the other side of a camera during COVID-19. And thank goodness we've got things like Zoom, and we can do this video conferencing and be together, although being together would be so much better, wouldn't it? But I hope that you can feel me pouring myself down this tiny, weeny little camera. I wish I was in the room with you. I wish I could walk past you and touch your shoulder or give you all a big hug, because you all deserve it. My goodness, women are carrying the can right now, and you all deserve the best of the best. So I do obviously have the privilege of the platform and the privilege of the microphone. And I wrote 3 books, and then last year I wrote my 4th book, and that was Future Proof Your Child for the 2020s and Beyond, which was the 10-year anniversary rewrite of the initial book, Future Proof Your Child, Parenting the Wired Generation. And I wrote both of those with Dr. Graham Codrington, and I've co-authored all my other books as well. But the new iteration, the next evolution that I'm going through is that Penguin Random House has just offered me a publishing contract because they've watched the work I've been doing around COVID-19, and they've offered me a contract to write solo Future-Proof Your Child. Not Future-Proof Your Child. I did say we're always in the process of becoming. We're always in the process of adulting. But it's Future-Proof Yourself to win at work and life. So I am extremely excited to be writing that book right now. I have until the end of November to get it done for a May release next year. But it's just, really, there's something for me about being able to put my words into print that is so fulfilling. And I do believe that everybody does have a book inside of themselves. But then I've done my 5 jackets. What I didn't realize is that there was going to be another jacket. At the end of 2017, on the 18th of November, I became unexpectedly, at the age of 50, a widow. My husband was murdered during a home invasion. And we had 2 intruders enter our home at 3 o'clock one morning. And my husband took a single shot to the heart. And my life and my children's lives were changed in just 6 minutes. So I stand here before you in a very plain black dress because I am now a widow. And I am in the process of designing my next jacket. I'm on a new adventure now. And that adventure is discovering who is Nikki without Simon, a man who was in my life for 28 years, to whom I was married for 26 years, with whom I have 2 boys, and with whom I lived for 23 years in the same home. So this is a new journey of discovery for me, and I have been faced with many, many choices over this time. I had to choose how to move forward in life. You know, when you're dealt a very unexpected blow that is traumatic and shocking and is a life quake, not a life tremor, it can either bury you as a victim or it can break you open and plant you like a seed. And it is a choice. It really is. And it's not an easy place to be. But there are things that have happened to me in the last 2.5 years that have really astounded me. And there's 2 things that I would like to share with you this evening that I think will be useful to you for any kind of change or loss that you may experience in your life. Now, loss actually surrounds us. Change is part of the human condition. Positive change, negative change, and loss. And loss doesn't have to be the death of someone. Loss can be the loss of a business, the loss of your health, the loss of your wealth, the loss of your home, the loss of a special person in your life. It can be anything, but we often don't think about loss. It could be changing jobs. It could be changing town, country, city, moving house. All of that brings in elements of loss because we have to let go in order to welcome in new things. If we get tied into the collateral damage of an issue, we become buried as a victim. The same can be said for COVID-19. COVID-19 was a curveball. None of us were expecting COVID-19, were we? And COVID-19 has brought a lot of stuff with it that we didn't ask for. And no, it's not fair. And yes, we'd like to go back to normal. But just like I cannot unwidow myself, we cannot un-COVID ourselves either. We have to accept life as it is, not as we would like it to be. And we have to work with what is right now. So about 9 months after my husband's death, it was my first Women's Day since his death. And I was invited to give a talk to 150 estate agents. And they wanted the talk 6 minutes that changed my life, which was the story of what had happened to us. But I'd never given that talk before. And it was incredibly difficult to put that together because it put me into post-traumatic stress because I was trying to package something bigger than me that I was still working out. I was very new in the grief cycle. And I was trying to put this very unlinear thing, very messy, very complicated thing into a linear presentation. And I really got into quite a pickle in a state. And I kept thinking, why did I accept this speaking engagement? Why? What have I got to share with this audience that is positive? And I remember getting really angry, and I was sitting in bed one Sunday morning before that talk, and I folded a piece of paper in half and I drew a line down the middle and I wrote collateral damage on the left-hand side and collateral beauty on the right-hand side. And just stream of consciousness, as the thoughts came, I wrote down every negative I could think of. And I got to 2.5 pages of negative emotions, horrible things that had happened. I lost my husband. I didn't just lose my husband, my children lost their father. They didn't just lose their father. I lost the potential co-grandparent of my grandchildren. Not only that, but my youngest son could never sleep in our home again. So we had to sell our house of 23 years. I lost my home. I lost my husband, and I pretty much felt like I lost my life at that point. And I wrote down every negative thing for 2.5 pages until I couldn't write another thing. And I thought I'll come back and add some more. Then I went on to the collateral beauty side thinking I might write down 5 or 10 things. And 5 pages later, I was still writing the positive stuff the sparks in the ashes that had come into my life since my husband's death, or as a result of my husband's death. And it completely blew me away. Now, this is an exercise that I would like to encourage you to do after you get off this call this evening, is go and fold a piece of paper in half, write COVID-19 at the top of the page, write collateral damage on one side, collateral beauty on the other, and I want you to do this exercise. I did it just before going on to a radio interview, and I do about 5 media interviews every single week, and I actually did this because I wanted to share the exercise with the listeners. And in 5 minutes, while I was listening to the presenter in my ear, I wrote down 10 things on the negative side. And I thought, well, I better stop there before she calls me and I'm on air. And I wrote down as many things as I could before she called me. And I got to about 25 items on the collateral beauty side of the list. Once again, proving that if you've got opportunity eyes, if your eyes are wide open, you're awake and you're conscious, you will find sparks in the ashes. And then I share this framework with you that will be hugely, hugely powerful in your life. On the night of my husband's funeral, we held a wake for our nearest and dearest friends. And at 10 o'clock that night, people started leaving. Now, I'd been so shocked during the week that I had barely cried, but now I started crying. And I started crying because this moment felt like a full stop. The next day was Sunday, and I didn't know what Sunday looked like. For the first time in my life, I had no idea what Sunday looked like or what it was going to feel like. A friend was standing next to me who happened to be a psychologist, and she said, "Nix, what's going on for you?" And I said, "Well, this just feels like the end. It feels like a full stop." And I'm sobbing. And she said, "I would like to encourage you to reframe your full stop as a comma, as a pause in your life." And she added one more thing. She said, "It's a comma and dot, dot, dot. And the dots are the future that you are going to create for yourself." I don't for a minute think that she knew how powerful this analogy, this framework was going to become for me. Because in that moment, let me tell you, it was more frightening having no idea what my future looked like. Because I'm a planner, I'm an A-type personality. I have plans not just for the week, the month, or the year, but for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And all our hopes, our dreams, our plans were shattered. It was more scary that moment than when I found my husband's dead body. And so I took on her metaphor, her analogy, and that has become the framework for my survival and my growth since my husband's death on this adventure of discovering who is Nikki without Simon. And those dots represent new people, new opportunities, new places, and new experiences. And while it might sound quite logical at this point, let me tell you, when I had my confidence shattered, when my life was broken and in pieces, to get up every morning was tough. To put myself back on the stage was tough. And to choose to put myself in new places with new people, having new experiences, was really tough. But if you don't choose to put yourself out there, if you choose to sit in a little dark hole, then you will become a victim of circumstances. If you don't reach out for the opportunities that are showing themselves, if you don't show courage, all those things will desert you. And it's not that I haven't mourned. I have mourned like you can't believe. For 2 years, it has been raw. But I'm finally finding my feet again, and there is life after death. And so I end my presentation with this quote, and it is that life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage and curiosity. And curiosity for me is the antidote to fear. And right now with COVID-19, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of depression. You need to use your sense of curiosity about the adventure that lies ahead, because we have the opportunity to reinvent, to reset, and to revisit our values and what's important to us, to do things differently, to show up differently. It's our curiosity that is going to help us to triumph over the situation and the circumstances in which we find ourselves right now. So every single one of you has the potential to become a legend in your own lifetime. You just need to show up as an everyday hero, as yourself, expressing who you are powerfully, showing up with strength, resilience, and grace. And your legend starts with the very next jacket that you wear. And there is something called the Sariti. And there is something called the Mariti. Your Mariti, this is a Sotho word, is the physical shadow that something leaves in the world, like a tree or a lamppost or a person's silhouette. That is your Mariti. But I would like to challenge you to use your curiosity and to look back on the journey you've traveled and see which jacket you're next going to put on and what kind of an impact you're going to have on the world, to create your Sariti. And your Sariti is the shape of your energy. It is the impact you are going to have on the world, and it is the perfume that you are going to leave behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikki. We are indeed not buried, but planted. It's always a pleasure to listen to your stories, Nikki, and I hope that you've inspired the ladies as much as you've inspired me. Now, ladies, we have a special message from someone very special to our association. He's the only man that we decided to invite onto the platform, actually. He would have loved to personally deliver this message himself. And we know that he would have put a personal touch. If you know Casey, you know how he would have made each and every one of you feel. So I'm going to try and impersonate Casey and just read out his message. Here goes. We celebrate women in oral health, in the oral health profession today. Everywhere, women have touched and changed lives in many different ways. Some of them fought for our rights. Some of them made life more worthwhile for us. Some taught us strength and determination. Most taught us how to love and give back. Above all, women have strived for personal safety, equality, and enriched lives for others. The fact that almost all of them have been great moms is something none of us have to be told about. Today's working women not only continue to be that, but are pound for pound as fierce corporate warriors as men. The women in the dental profession are mothers, partners, sisters, and daughters who not only run their households, but also are fierce leaders who make great advances in the profession as whole while deeply nurturing their families and their team and co-workers. There is no doubt about what women have done. Women not only do more, but they do it equally well, despite their many hats that they wear. We pay tribute to you today. We should pay it every day. I had a better plan to say more, but Ishcom dribbled me tonight. That's Casey's touch there. To tell a woman everything she cannot do is to tell her what she can, a Spanish proverb. SADA loves you all, from Casey. Thank you very much, Casey. And now I'm going to take this time just to read the questions that you have posed on the side. I've been monitoring the questions. Some of them are comments, beautiful comments going to the ladies. But I'm going to ask now is all the ladies, please just switch on your videos, and then you will unmute yourself when it's your turn to speak. I'm going to ask all the ladies to switch on their videos. Including the ladies in oral health. Our doctors on the panel, you can switch on your screen, your video. Going to read the comments. The first comment is from Dr. Yvette Solomons, who's also not a stranger to us. She's also a personal mentor. She might not know this. She inspires a lot of ladies in the oral health sector. And this is what she has to say. Is it not a fact that we cannot remain silent about all the systemic inequalities? Conversations must be had so that we can be part of the solution. Indeed, Dr. Solomons. I don't know if the ladies want to comment. Nikki, Roxy, would you like to comment on what Dr. Solomons has said? Dr. Makwakwa, you can also come in. Nikki?
Yes, I agree. We can't be silent, and it doesn't matter who you are or what your profession is. You need to use whatever platform you have in order to make change around you. My fear about all the gender-based violence, the inequality that persists in our society, is that we also allow it to persist because we buy into the victimization of women. And when I look and listen to a lot of the media coverage around women's rights that goes on at this time of the year, so much of it keeps us almost caged and imprisoned in that stereotype. And we as women have to work with our own minds to actually break it down for ourselves. Yes, it's great. We have to fight the fight for, the bigger cause, but in our own world, we have to improve, how we see ourselves. I think what Roxy spoke about was so true. We are caged by sometimes our own perceptions, and those perceptions are molded by society. And holding it all together and looking good and not actually maybe speaking our truth often traps us into staying as we are. Maybe Roxy wants to add to that.
Thanks, Nikki. Roxy?
Absolutely, I do. And thank you very much for the question. And I'll just give this background. It was on radio as well, with a lot of the looting that is happening here in the Western Cape with colored people who are fighting for their rights and places to reside. And so I'm just going to give a small scenario. I grew up in a township in Kimberley in Galeshewe. As a child, what I used to see was fights happening almost every weekend. In fact, it was like entertainment. And we would see women fighting women, like grown-ups. And I'm talking about me as a kid, as like 4, 5, 6 years old. We'd be seeing women fighting women, taking their clothes off, and so fighting to hurt the other one. And it seemed as if the more clothes the one was taking off, she seemed to be more of the hero. So there's a certain culture that we need to recognize, and a certain learning that culture has brought into people. And I always say, until we can deal with the learning or even unlearning the things that we have adopted when it comes to sexism, when it comes to racism, and a lot of the rights that every person is fighting for themselves, there's a certain unlearning that we have to undergo. And when we undergo that, because those kind of things that we have learned, we bring into our homes, we bring into our families, and we bring into the communities that we live in. There are certain things that are not acceptable, but we kind of accept them and we have a certain agreement, even though we don't express it verbally, but there's a certain way of like just accepting like, oh, well, that is the norm, that we're used to that happening. So until we are at a point that each and every one of us as individuals stop pointing a finger at the other one, because we don't even know the poison that the other one is walking around with, but acknowledging that there it is. It could be that thing. And even acknowledging it yourself, within inside of yourself, and doing that transformation within you, in your home. I said to someone 2 weeks ago, I said, when you want to heal the next person, the healing will start when you start healing yourself. Transformation happens around you when you, the person, have already transformed. But if that doesn't happen, we will be having the same conversation over and over and over again, like a broken record.
Indeed, Roxy. Thank you very much. Anonymous has made a comment, and I think maybe Dr. Makwakwa can come in with an answer for this one. I find sexism exists in the field, especially from males over the age of 50. There's a lot of belittling the dentist in front of the rest of the team. How do you deal with it?
How do you deal with it? I think it's very, very important that when something happens, you call it out the very first time it happens. Because if you do not call it out, it becomes a pattern. So what I've also realized with sexism, sometimes things will happen, somebody will speak to you a certain way, but you'll actually only realize it much later, you know, because it's not just sexism, there's microaggressions in the workplace. But the best thing to do is to deal with it immediately so that it does not continue. Because as Roxy and Nikki are saying, that most of the people are displaying things because they've actually been allowed to. It's a pattern, it's a grooming, it's a culture, it's something that they have learned. It's a learned behavior that they think has been normalized, when in fact it is not. So know your space and deal with it immediately, because if you leave it, it will continue.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makwakwa. Roxy, I think this one is for you. When I look at the time, wow, you are amazing. I loved your talk. It's time we learn to spread love. Hope I get a chance to meet you sometime. Roxy, do you have social media platforms that you'd like to share with our members? Here's one that is hoping to meet you sometime.
Yes, absolutely. On all my handles, very simple, Roxy Marosa. So I look forward to the person. And please just identify yourself from the SADA talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Roxy. And then we have Dr. Odi. I remember Odi from back in varsity. And she says, thank you very much thank you so much to all the speakers. This is really empowering and inspiring. So thank you, ladies. Anonymous says, me too. So Anonymous, I assume Anonymous is also thanking the ladies. A lot of the comments that we have here are just beautiful, ladies spreading the love. I mean, this is what we want to do during this month. Ladies have been through a lot. I mean, we know that our country is plagued with a very bad situation of gender-based violence. So women really go through the most. So we need to share this love. So Marie Creek says, lovely lecture from our ladies. So inspirational and heartwarming. So sorry for your loss, Nikki. Nikki, Marie Creek is sending love your way. Thanks, Nikki. Dr. Manoli Pillay, you're an exceptional woman. Nikki, looking at the time, they are speaking to you right now. You're an exceptional woman and an immense inspiration to all women, Nikki. Thank you for sharing your story. Vava Jihan says, thank you very much, Nikki, for such a profound talk. I enjoyed every minute of it. Many things I really needed to hear. Bless you. Betsy Lowe says, exceptional speaker, inspiring woman. Stefina Motlotsi says, wow, Nikki, profound. Valmarie Stoffel says, thank you so much for this webinar. It was truly inspiring. I'm glad, Valmarie, we touched you in a way that we wanted to touch every woman in oral health. I think at this point in time, I'm just going to allow Norma to play the second video from our sponsors, GSK, and then we've got a bit of time for the ladies just to give us a parting shot before we actually close the evening. Norma, you can play the next video.
New Sensodyne Herbal Multicare, sensitivity relief with natural herbal extracts.
Thank you very much, Norma. I think at this point, Roxy, I'm going to start with you just to give us your parting shots before we close the evening. And then I'll hand over to Dr. Makwakwa, and then Nikki will end it with you. I don't see Dr. Valgemoed and Dr. Rasool, so I presume they have left us. So I'll just give it to the ladies that are still on the podium, just to give us your last shots.
Thank you, Dr. Ntabiseng. Something that I also just want to highlight is that people in your profession, and I just look at myself, I'm an actress, and I find sometimes I'm defined by the public. I have to act in a particular way. I have to speak in a particular way. And when I'm sitting at a restaurant and I'm sitting and I'm eating, I have to eat in a particular way. Don't allow for crumbles to fall around and that. And I think challenges that people in your profession may experience may be the same. You are a celebrity in your community and even in your families. And I'll just say, just watch out for the things that deny you your self-expression and your humanity and just you being who you are. Because the other thing as well is that when people place you on a certain pedestal, there's some expectation that comes with that. And especially when you become aware of it and you kind of like lose the real you and you feel that you have to match that where people have placed you. As Nikki was saying, that, you know, the human that you are, the jacket that you are in the moment, get to embrace it and yes, acknowledge where we come from or the contribution that people have made to us, but don't lose yourself. And I think it's often in losing ourselves that I find that as human beings, we kind of like frizzle out and we don't give each other the human respect that we deserve. And I also just really want to say, Nikki, thank you so very much. And I had a bit of a tear when you were sharing about the loss of your husband, because a friend of mine also, and she still has not overcome her husband passing away, although he actually passed away due to ill health. But it is a difficult thing when you have been with someone for so many years. You have become one, you are so used to this person, they're a friend, and you just know that they're there. It's almost like losing a limb. At some point you forget that the limb is not there and you kind of like want to step on it. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much, Roxy. Dr. Makwakwa?
Thank you. And thank you to the ladies, Roxy. I thoroughly enjoyed your talk, very educational, transformational. Nikki, I'm going to say you are the Nikki Bush. It took me a while to realize. I used to listen to you all the time. Thank you, and so sorry for your loss. I think my parting words is going to be, you must be the change that you want to see. But for you sometimes to realize it, you need to realize that you're not an island. You cannot do it on your own. You need support. You need people to actually help you lift you up. And you also need to be there to lift other people up. So as a woman in dentistry, you know, for instance, whenever I had some challenges, I've always tried to get mentors. I mean, there's Prof. Hlongwa, Dr. Solomon. I'm one who will always go and find a mentor because there is so much you can learn from the person who has been through it. Dr. Solomon, Prof. Muipulai, I could go on and on. And when you engage with them, then you're actually going to get strength because they've been there before. They've been in that space and they know all the challenges. So whatever space or jacket you are going to wear, your next jacket, prepare yourself adequately, seek advice. Because I mean, I can remember once what Prof. Hlongwa said to me once, that you know what, at the end of the day, sometimes when you go up there, it's very cold. So when actually I feel a little breeze, I'm like, no, I was told that it's cold, but I must make sure that whoever comes after me finds the place a bit warmer. So thank you very much. We are there for you. And Ntabiseng, as I always say, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Dr. Magwagwa. Thank you very much. And Nikki, can I just add this comment that I'm still in awe at the fact that you still fit into your high school blazer.
I keep my fingers crossed.
And the thing, when you couldn't see me, I was actually, you know what, I left to go look at all my jackets. I can't fit into some of them. Lockdown has been horrible.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, Dr. Makwakwa, what you've just said is just so on the mark. We have to be the change we want to see in the world. It starts with us. And I want to add something in terms of being an oral health professional. You are a little bit like a teacher. Doctors, teachers, gynecologists, dentists, we as your public, we as your market, we form relations. It's relationship marketing. And if you are interested in us, and if you build yourself up as an interesting person, like I know my dentist cycles the Argus and he cycles the 94.7 because, we chat. And the stronger you build a relationship, the more you know about your clients' personal lives and share a little bit about yourself, you make yourself human, the more we will stick with you because we like to be in a relationship. We like this belonging and this togetherness. It's yummy. You're part of the family. You are part of the family. So don't ever forget, whether you're our oral hygienist or the nurse or the dentist, you are part of our families. And the more you invest in relationships, the stickier the relationships become, and people will stay with you for a long time. And then my last inspirational thought for the evening is that many people complain that they don't have the life they want. Mm-hmm. And if you look at those people, imagine a motorboat going through a dam or the sea or a river. A boat with an engine creates a wake, that white stuff behind the boat. Yeah. And many people are looking backwards at the white stuff and they're saying, my life's not working because look what happened to me, because COVID happened, because I had an abusive husband, because I didn't grow up in the right place. Life doesn't work. But actually we miss the point. The real energy is what's going on with the motor. It's not the wake of the boat that's driving the boat. It's the kinetic energy of now, and it's all the decisions and the choices we make in this moment with the engine right now that determine what that wake is going to look like eventually. So we need to focus on the engine on now. And Roxy, it's been an absolute joy to work with you. And there's so many of you on this panel. I would love to interview you for my podcasts. So you're going to be getting a phone call from me. Thank you all for being an absolute inspiration.
Thank you very much, Nikki. And for me, as a young professional and as a young woman in South Africa, I must say, I'm going to count this day as one of my blessings because it's been so wonderful to be surrounded by so many phenomenal women. I mean, I've taken so many, I've been writing down when I was out of the camera, I've been writing down so many motivational words. And thank you very much to all the ladies for putting on your lipstick and giving us your time, giving us your brains, you know, just teaching us and actually sharing your lives with everybody. Thank you to all our participants and for sacrificing this evening. I mean, we've taken up 2 hours of your evening and you sat right through it, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took as much as I took out of it. And please note that you will get your 2 CEUs for this event, your 2 ethical CEUs for this event. And that concludes our evening, and good night, everybody. I'm just going to ask our panelists to just remain behind while the participants leave the session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much.